All right, here we go. So happy, what is it, Thursday, everyone? Nick Marro here with Smitty, as always, to help you break down tonight's NBA DFS slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. A pretty good slate tonight. Once again, we are dealing with two separate slates between the two sites. DraftKings had been including the late games. It looks like they chopped them off tonight, though, probably because the NFL is going on. It's just one late game. We'll definitely get to that. But before I throw it over to you, Smitty, definitely got to congratulate you on a pretty strong night. But also Chuck on an absolutely ridiculous night where he finished first and second in the $2 on FanDuel. I know he took down some other low stakes contests as well, but we were talking pre stream. I mean, he was up by like 30, 40 points. Like, usually it's a sweat. I don't even think he had to sweat the last hour or so of that late game. But yeah, man, we're hot right now.
Yep. Yeah, I was actually talking to him at that point, and he was like, "Dude, there's no way anyone's gonna catch me." I was like, "Yeah." And then he ended up, he had one lineup with Bones that ended up coming up to second place. So maybe he would have passed himself, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's never bad when you're competing with yourself for first place, especially in those super like top heavy tournaments. I think it's like 1,500 or 1K to first, 750 to second. Taking both those down in a $2 contest, where the most you can enter is like $50. That's just ridiculous ROI. But yeah, shouts out to Chuck. I know you had a good night as well. There were a few others in the Discord. I love to see it, guys. Let's just build on that momentum, keep it going. Shouts out to everyone in chat. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, helps us keep this free content coming out to you. But I want to start the game by game here. I think there's enough kind of to talk about that we need to hit the ground running. So first and foremost, we have the opening games of the slate. Two games locking at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's interesting because it features two of the better players that usually play on the West Coast. Let's start here with the Dallas and the Wizards. I don't have spreads pulled up right now. For whatever reason, this book is showing me money lines. But regardless, Dallas is getting healthy. Sounds like they do have both Luka and Kyrie active tonight. Obviously, good for them. They pretty much run the usage on this team. Still no Dante Exum. Najee Marshall's out as well. Nothing too significant as far as some of these secondary options go. Against the Wizards, I'm guessing we see, I want to say Lively get the start. Um, but I mean, it would be a revenge game for Gafford. So maybe you could get a center here. I'm interested in Luca a little bit. I think he's tough to get to, but this is a damn good matchup. But quickly, I guess since we are not dealing with much news here, what's your take on Dallas overall? They all seem to be pretty low on.
Yeah, as far as Dallas, I don't have a ton of interest. Like you mentioned, throwing in one of the centers looks okay, but that's pretty much it. You could always get to Luca. I'm under the field currently. I don't feel great, but like you said, he's kind of hard to get to, and um just with Kyrie back, I don't really love the price tag.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, he can still spike that ceiling. We haven't seen it much from him this year. It's in his bag, so at low ownership, I don't mind mixing him in. I do want to just highlight PJ Washington's ridiculously priced right now. I mean, some of those games were without Luca. His price needs to come down before we're ever considering playing him again. Clay's missed some time as well, so most of this team is mispriced. So not much to talk about on Dallas. On the other side of this one, we do have Kuzma, Kispert, Keyshawn George, all out for the Wizards here. Sadiq Bey and Patrick Baldwin are still out as well. Malcolm Brogdon is available. Another team where we're not seeing much ownership. The one guy drawing even over 10% is Alexander Sarr. Over on DK, where he has power forward eligibility, seeing 16% going to him. Not a bad matchup against this front court, but kind of similar to Dallas. Pretty healthy team, even without Kuz. I don't know. They look okay to me. Is there anything kind of standing out, though, as like a stand you want to take on the Wizards here?
Not really. I'm getting to a little bit more Jared Butler than the field, just min price value. I'm not projecting blowout, but if there is a blowout, he probably sees increased run. So I think there is some upside there. And then I'm getting to some Alex Sarr. I'm under the field, but I think he's a pretty decent play.
Yeah, I mean, Sarr gets a bad rap because his draft class is generally tolerable. Like he's a good player though. I don't think he should have been a number one draft pick, but really he doesn't get the pick who he's drafted with. So don't want to knock him too much for that. But yeah, again, 232 point total here. If you're landing on parts of this game, I wouldn't be upset about it. But at the same time, everything kind of priced where it should be. We do have some situations where injuries are definitely going to open up some better value. I will get to chat, guys. Just going to do this other 7 o'clock game here. We have the Nuggets taking on the Cavaliers in Cleveland. Kind of a higher total than I was expecting, 234.5. On the Denver side of things, Aaron Gordon's back, which is good to see for them. Kankar is out. I don't think there's anyone else significant as far as like guys who are regular in the rotation in terms of injury. Jokic, kind of similar to Luka, or I mean, maybe even a little worse because of the matchup. Super, super expensive. But whenever you get a player with this type of upside at low ownership, probably makes sense to mix him into your tournament builds. Murray on FanDuel, where he's sub 8K, I think you get to a little bit. Porter feels a little bit overpriced, as does Brown now that Gordon's back. Gordon's price is back up. Russ has been great off the bench. Don't think I could pay 6K for him, though, with this team healthy. Denver kind of feels like the last two teams we talked about. Is there anything here you see yourself getting to?
No, for me on DraftKings, it's basically Jokic and Aaron Gordon are the only players I'm getting to.
Yeah, I did want to quickly check how many minutes Gordon played last game. Just pulling that up. 32. Yeah, so
Yeah.
Gordon's all systems go. If we're talking about like point per dollar, I actually think he's probably the best play here, at least on DK. He does rate as the best value play for Denver, and he's a mid range play. That kind of tells you all you need to know. So I like that shout. And then over on the Cleveland side, and I promise we'll slow things down after this. We got Ty Jerome, who was just ruled in. Craig Porter's out. Not that he's been heavily involved in the rotation. Max Strus is out as well. So just another team who's healthier than they've been lately. Mitchell, Garland are in. Levert in and healthy coming off the bench. Mobley, Allen. I mean, Mobley probably a little bit too cheap for what he could do here. Mitchell does go overlooked because he's not as consistent as some of the other high price guards. I don't know. I don't mind Mitchell or Mobley here. But yeah, it's kind of redundant through these first two games. There's just not much here I really love.
Yeah, same here. Mobley, I do like. I'm over the field on him right now. I think he looks good, especially where he
Yeah.
has a power forward eligibility, but not a crazy stand or anything. I'm about 5 to 10% over the field.
Yeah, and I do want to bring this up. I mean, there is some strategy that you can get into here as far as like there's a couple games that lock at 7. I mean, honestly, some nights there's plays in these early games you really can't get away from. There's not a ton of news we're waiting on. But as we kind of talk through these things, if we find that we are kind of waiting on some things to break in either direction, you could maybe not use much of these games, just kind of give yourself some flexibility. At the same time, obviously, completely fading them is pretty scary. There's a few plays here that could very well end up optimal in spite of the fact these teams are healthy. But let's get to chat now, guys. And thank you for bearing with me. Appreciate it. We have, let's see, Thuggathuggin first here, our resident Yahoo player. And that's what I needed to shout you out on. You like 4X on Yahoo last night,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You're having issues with FanDuel customer service, but
yeah.
yeah, tell us about Yahoo.
Yeah, it went good last night. Tonight, I'll just give you my highest exposed players as of right now. It's Charles Bassey. He's only $12 there, basically min price. Zach Levine, $29. Looks like a good value play in the mid range. Then I'm getting to a lot of Towns, which I think is kind of a GPP play. And then I think Pods is a good value. Looney, Royce O'Neal, someone I'm getting to. I expect to be under owned. And then you can mix in Micic. I don't love it, but I think Malik Monk, Chris Paul, and Hartenstein all look pretty good.
Nice, man. Yeah, so Thugget, I hope you heard that. You're getting some goods on Yahoo now. It definitely helps to have one of our touts playing there. Obviously, we give them a little bit extra attention. Amateur shouts out with the yo. Van Negro Jones, any Simpson love tonight for value. We'll talk about this when we get to that team. I am with Chuck. I heard him bring it up yesterday. We were both kind of down on him as a pivot off Mitchich, and he was awesome. And I know that there were a few people out there asking about him. I don't know. I thought that Mitchich would play better. I didn't think he'd get benched so quickly. Obviously, we're still dealing without LaMelo Ball. That's one of the next games we're going to talk about, though. So I won't spend too much time on that yet. Is there a reason why Pods is the thumbnail? Shouts out Boyle, who's our manager here, manages the NBA team. He threw that out there. I mean, I like Pods tonight. The reason is probably because there's no Curry. To me, he's not like a smash play. Necessarily. He's a pretty good play though, but we'll talk about that when we get there. And yeah, and shouts out and man and Chuck smash last night. Absolutely ridiculous. Unicorn Love with his usual money time comment. Chuck here shouts out once again. Congrats. Jordan Miller was in the second place lineup. He played the whole fourth quarter. I mean, he didn't do much. He had like one or two putbacks. But again, when your whole team's that damn good, it doesn't necessarily matter. Jones here, Luca gonna nuke the Wizards. Could definitely see it. Um, and no, the Wizards don't have a lot of players out. Just Kuzma. So I think we covered them pretty well, but we'll talk about just general value when we get there. Mikal Bridges' price looks good. For some reason, feels like a trap. I mean, Mikal Bridges is okay. He's super inconsistent. High ceiling, low floor. Grady Dick's in, Podol's out, shuts out power. Always coming in with the news before I can even see it on Twitter. So definitely appreciate that. We're gonna have a lot to talk about with Toronto with this news that Janker Pertl's out. Landon, again, I'm going through all the comments right now, guys. We usually don't do this. Top FanDuel cash plays. Do we like stocking the Spurs? I'll answer the second part. We do like stacking the Spurs. I'll let you answer this, Smitty. I need to catch my breath. Top FanDuel cash plays. I know you can't play there right now, so maybe this was a stupid segue. But yeah, I think we're starting with Chris Paul, probably some of the Warriors over there tonight.
Yeah. CP3, I would say Kaminga for sure. I like DeJounte. I think he's a good cash play as well. And then you could go Booker, but I think I lean more of like the value as the core, like Castle. Amon Thompson looks good there. He looks even better if Van Vliet's out. And then basically just some Warriors.
Yep, I'm with you. Yeah, we'll talk about all these plays, guys, as we get through them. So some of these questions they come up, I'm just ripping through them. You'll get more detail as we kind of go through the show. If we don't give you the attention you deserve, feel free to just bring it up again, and I'll definitely make sure I do. Podal out. Darnell asking what your tag is on Yahoo. Feel free if you want to let him know. I don't know if they got head-to-heads over there or what. But yeah, just check the top of the leaderboard. I'm guessing it's some variation of Smitty's name. Unicorn, as for your Wizards, 20 DK points, Johnny Davis. Yeah, I think, is that who you brought up as far as like maybe getting run, or was it Butler? I always get them confused.
I mentioned Butler.
Yeah, so Davis, I mean, I'd rather play Butler than Davis. They're kind of similar. They're both guards that tend to get some extra run. If it's a blowout, Carrington is the rookie who they do actually want to be a part of that rotation, though. So even if Carrington comes off the bench, I'd rather play him than those two at the same time. Not necessarily a spot I'm rushing to get to. And then, yeah, Darnell is Twirl. If anyone wants to join his contest, send the head to head. Okay, so thanks for correcting me, Van Eager. I said not a lot of guys were out. It just seems that way because they do run such a deep rotation. But yeah, I mean, outside of Sar, I think we both said there's really no one that we're rushing to get to. Um, but yeah, I think we're caught up on chat now. And I can't promise, I didn't know we'd have so much activity in there that I'll go through every comment again. But man of my word, had to stick to it. Let's get into these 7:30 games now, answer some of those questions you guys had. Starting with KJ Simpson. Charlotte is in New York tonight. Still no Miles Bridges, still no Trey Mance. Grant Williams out for the year, no LaMelo Ball. So they're pretty thin. And Brandon Miller looks good. He's priced where he should be. I think if you're getting to him, you're fine. Mitchell probably gets the start at point guard again, but again, he played terribly last game. We saw KJ, aka Kenneth Simpson, get some extra run. So he's kind of interesting as value. I think if he starts, he's going to be popular. At the same time, I mean, I do see a world in which he's outplaying Mitchell again. I also see a world in which Mitchell is unowned and sub 5K. I think he makes some sense, even at 5K flat, as a play you might want to get to. But kind of a complicated situation here. So Lulin spiked an upside in Grant Williams' absence, also showed he has a very low floor. But yeah, I mean, other than Miller, is there anything you feel good about for Charlotte? Like, I could see mixing in some of these secondary pieces, but it's tough for me to say I'm bullish on any of them.
Yeah, not at all. For me, I'm just kind of mixing them in. My highest owned is Miller. I only have 4% of him, and all the rest are 2 to 3% plays.
Yeah, I do want to just bring up Nick Richards. He had an awesome game, only played 29 minutes, got over 45 points on both sides in terms of fantasy production. 1% owned. I mean, you could mix him in. At the same time, it's not a play I feel great about. Definitely a tough matchup here against the Knicks. Over on the Knicks side of things, Precious Achua is now questionable. He's been out for a while. If he comes back, that could cut into some of the I don't know. It's not going to change much. Campaign is questionable. Mitchell Robinson out for a long time. His name is still on the injury report, though. But yeah, pulling up the Knicks, I mean, we know the starters are going to get minutes. We know this is a great matchup. We know even if the game gets out of hand, Thibs doesn't like to pull his guys until he absolutely has to. Brunson looks good here, drawing a lot of ownership on both sides. We've actually seen Cat have the higher usage of the two for most of the season. His price is pretty much where it's been. Good matchup for him. I will say Diabate, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, has definitely boosted the defense of the Charlotte Hornets team in the front court. But with Richards and Williams both back, his minutes are going to go down. So this could be a good matchup again for centers. Josh Hart's fine. OG's fine. McBride off the bench, not the craziest play. Someone did ask about Bridges. The DK price is tempting. Just know you're dealing with an extremely wide range of outcomes. This guy definitely relies on his three-point shot falling in his role on these Knicks to hit value. But, I mean, he's taking the shots. I'm fine getting to a little. But, Smitty, just kind of give me your overall thoughts on these Knicks. Good matchup. We know Thibs is going to make them run their minutes.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. It's mainly Towns and Brunson. I'm under the field on both, but I think they both look pretty good. Towns just takes up the center position, which kind of hurts overall, but he's only 9K, so you could argue he's underpriced. And then the other starters like Hart, Bridges, and Ananobi, they're all pretty good GPP plays. No one with crazy ownership except Hart at 14%, but I think they're all pretty good players to mix into your lineups.
Yeah, and I do want to mention McBride one more time. I think at his DK price, he's playable right now, but if campaign's out and you get 4 or 5 more minutes for him, Thibs doesn't like to go deeper on the bench. He likes to give the guys that already get minutes a few more. Maybe McBride becomes a pretty interesting piece of value, especially if that ownership stays low.
Yep.
But anything else from this game before we move on to OKC and Toronto?
No, that's it for me.
Nice, man. All right, we got OKC north of the border taking on the Toronto Raptors. OKC, still no Jalen Williams with an eye. Chet Holmgren's going to be out for a while, and Sumi Jang's out, but they're pretty healthy. So generally speaking, they look pretty good here. This is a good matchup. I mean, SGA has finally been playing like SGA. His price hasn't come up. Personally, one of my favorite payups on the slate. I think the last show I was on 2 days ago. I was super bullish on him at low ownership, getting to him over De'Aaron Fox, who was chalk, and that worked out for me. Kind of saved my night in a lot of ways, but I'm very happy to go back there, even though he's drawing more ownership this evening. Jalen Williams continues to produce at a high level. I mean, there's some sticker shock in that price. Fine getting to him, though. And Hartenstein's back to 100%, playing his full minutes. And I will once again name drop Case and Wallace. If he's going to continue to start here, just a guy who you can mix in his value coming up back to back games where he's exceeding value for that price point in terms of like 5, 6x. I think he's pushing 6x in back to back games. 0% owned on DK, 1% owned on FanDuel. Just a piece of value I'll mix in because there is a world, excuse me, where some of the chalk value fails. Just someone to mix in 5, 10% if you're playing a bunch of lineups. But what's your take on OKC here? I actually like them a lot tonight. Probably going to be one of the teams I'm most exposed to.
Yeah, I like that. You brought up SGA and Jalen Williams. Those are my two highest exposed. I like both of them. Really like Jalen Williams. He's underpriced here. And then, like you said, mixing in like Case and Wallace. If Isaiah Joe starts, or even off the bench, I don't hate mixing him in. He has pretty good positional eligibility on DraftKings.
Yeah, Joe shot really well last game. And I hate to do this to myself, but I got to take the wind out of my own sails here on the Case and Wallace call. I still want to get to Wallace. I think he starts. I think we have him for 27 or so minutes. Um, Alex Caruso's back tonight. He missed a few games. And the thing with Caruso is, even when he was healthy, they weren't giving him a ton of minutes. But if this game is competitive, he could close, and that could take minutes away from someone like Joe or Wallace. So just keep that in mind. Again, I'm only getting 5% or so. I'm not going to change anything. But if you were single entry building and you were landing on one of those guys, maybe it's enough for you to look elsewhere. On the other side of this one, we have another team with some injury news, the Toronto Raptors. And since we got the Podol news, I'm going to refresh the model here as I pull up the rest of this injury report. But yeah, Jakob Podol's out tonight. Still no Emmanuel Quickly, no Kelly Olynyk. Grady Dick is in. I think I saw Power mention, and still no Bruce Brown. He's kind of conditioning, getting himself up to speed. But yeah, they're thin, especially in the front court right now. Scotty Barnes has been solid, totally comfortable getting there. Um, I don't know, man. I don't think they start Boucher, right? It's probably going to be Mogbo, but I don't know. I guess we have to like some of the value at center here. Like, I don't know if I want to play Mogbo necessarily. Um, I mean, the price is definitely nice. You get him at power forward on FanDuel. So I take that back. On FanDuel at power forward, I like him. Knowing we're only going to get 20 minutes or so, I don't love him on DK. I'd actually rather go to Chris Boucher, even coming off the bench, just knowing the type of fantasy point per minute producer he can be. But yeah, how are you handling this front court? And I guess in that same breath, just kind of give me your overall take of Toronto. But I do think kind of getting Center right for them could be important tonight, especially if you're playing a bunch of OKC and looking to run it back.
Yeah, for sure. I'm expecting Mogbo to get the start here. And
Yep.
then I think they bring Boucher for the backup 5 minutes and possibly even play some 4 minutes. So I think his minutes upside's actually pretty high here. Not the best matchup, but I prefer getting to him over Mogbo because of his power forward eligibility on DraftKings. I think he looks like a really strong value option. And then Scotty Barnes, I think you can go back to Scotty 9,100 on DraftKings. He looks more like a GPP play on FanDuel, but still looks really good there with his stock upside. Brutal matchup, but there's definitely some value here.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And I do want to bring up Barrett as well. I think he's pretty good at his price. Again, not a ton of meat on the bone now that he's over 8K, but with Quickly and others out, seeing a little bit of extra usage, playing nearly 40 minutes a night, that's enough for me to get to some of him. So Barnes and Barrett look great. I'd say Agbaji's okay to maybe mix in, not something I'm bullish on. But yeah, I think it's Mogbo on FanDuel just because he's power forward eligible and 400 cheaper. Boucher over on DK. But yeah, you can mix and match these guys. It's just we haven't seen Mogbo play over 20 minutes all season, I don't think. I'd have to go through his entire game log. He played 25 against Charlotte the day before Halloween. I don't know what the situation was there. But other than that, he's been capped at 20 minutes. So that's what I'm going to expect here. But definitely an interesting situation. We have value in other spots. You don't necessarily need to force it against a defense like OKC. But Boucher has as much upside at that price as probably anyone tonight. So definitely keep him in mind, especially in tournaments. All right, we got a couple 8 o'clock games here. Three actually. I'll take a quick look at chat. And again, guys, I don't know if I can get to every single um, question. Amateur question on PJ Washington. He's smashing. Any idea why he's not popping? It's because of the price, man. And a lot of those big games came with Luka out. And then when Luka came back, Kyrie was out. So he has been kind of the 1B in that offense the past week or so. Now he's number 3 in that offense very clearly. So it's tough for me to want to get to him at that price. Enough upside maybe to use him a little bit, but not for me. I mean, could you get the PJ at that price? For me, I think we're going to see it closer down to 6K, maybe even lower after a few more games of Luka and Kyrie being back.
Yeah, I think he's just overpriced. He's a fine GPP option, but no one I'm trying to really get to.
Jose asking about pods, if why he's not on the DK player pool. That game is not on the main slate. That's a late game. It is on the FanDuel slate, so we'll talk about that game last. But if you're on DK, they chopped off that late game. We'll talk about Sochi and we get the Spurs amateur. We just talked about Toronto Spaniard. Honest opinion, Brogdon or Bridges? I'll give you this one, Smitty. This is tough. I mean, the
Let's.
minutes are Bridges, but Brogdon's been pretty good.
Yeah, I want to say Bridges off the top of my head. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, the minutes should be the tiebreaker 9 times out of 10. Let's see what the model says real quick. Bridges, 14.
Yeah.
Brogdon. Yeah, I know the model really doesn't like Brogdon because he doesn't tend to get to 30 minutes. So you got to go with Bridges. But if you're playing cash, and I probably wouldn't play either in cash, I'd maybe go with Brogdon just because we know he has the high floor. But let's keep plugging away, guys. We got a few more games to get to. Making pretty good time, though. So 8 o'clock, we get the Bulls and the Spurs. This is one of the more interesting games tonight, given all the moving parts and injury news on the Chicago side of things. Giddey is questionable. That's a big one. Kobe White and Patrick Williams continue to be out. No Lonzo Ball tonight. He's been playing sometimes, 15 minutes or so, but they won't have him available here. So we already know Kobe White's out. We already know Patrick Williams is out. I like Vooch here. I like Giddey here if he's in. Levine and Donsumu look really good. Phillips is probably going to start at the 4. He hasn't been great, but I think if he's playing 25 plus minutes at his price, pretty good play. Horton Tucker never plays a lot of minutes, but when he's on the floor, he does everything. So I'd say like Phillips and Cash, maybe Horton Tucker in tournaments, but saying Phillips and Cash is kind of gross knowing he's sub 5% owned right now. I do think that comes up if Giddey's ruled out. I also think they need more spacing if Giddey's ruled out. So we may see the rare Matas Buzelis start here. Something to keep an eye on, but kind of a lot to talk about for the Bulls. I think obviously we don't mind getting to Levine or AO, right? But how are you handling the rest of this Chicago Bulls team?
Yeah, Levine's one of my favorite plays on the slate, and then Giddey. I like Giddey if he's in. I'm building as if he's in. I don't know if I'm going to change that, but right now I have him in, and I'm over the field on him. I think he looks like a solid play, and then AO looks good. THT is someone I'm mixing in. I think he looks good. He has good eligibility, basically min price on DraftKings. And then if you get Giddy out, you just have even higher ceiling there. And then Matos, I think Matos is a good play, especially if Giddy's out. I like him more, but I think he's still someone you can mix in even if Giddy's in.
Yeah, I mean the thing with Matas, he has a ceiling. It's just I don't know how many minutes are they going to let him go. But I do think if Giddy's out, they need his spacing more. And if Giddy's in, Phillips probably gets to start at the four. But yeah, what's your thoughts on Julian Phillips? Obviously, not the most exciting play, nothing flashy about him, but at mid price, probably a starter, probably gets, I don't know, 25 plus minutes. Is this someone you have any exposure to on DK?
I have a little bit. It's not really my favorite, but the model really likes him, so I probably need to bump him up some.
Yeah, it's funny because he's probably so similar to Horton Tucker that like I don't know. Horton Tucker definitely has more upside, but I think in terms of floor, it probably is Phillips. But yeah, I mean, just seeing the ownership discrepancy between the two, I'd try to get a little bit over on Phillips. I mean, I like Horton Tucker. I wouldn't get under on him necessarily, but yeah, just mix and match some of this value, I think. And if Giddy's out, do so even more. On the Spurs side of things, a lot of news. Maybe not necessarily, but big news certainly. No Victor Wembanyama tonight. No Trey Jones either. Other than that, they're pretty much healthy. Paul popping is one of the best plays on the slate. Very, very popular on both sites. Stephon Castle's been excellent. Really good story for the Spurs as well. They do a great job drafting guards. And yeah, I mean, getting tutored by Chris Paul certainly helps his career trajectory as well. But yeah, the front court's what we really need to talk about here. And it's going to be interesting. Bassey's drawing more ownership than Zach Collins. Or actually, it's leveled out now since I've refreshed, or slightly more. So Bassey's 46% owned on DK compared to Collins, who's 41. Collins completely unowned on FanDuel, as is Charles Bassey. I thought we'd see Collins getting some love on FanDuel. I know they priced him up. I know the game log's disgusting, but he's probably going to start at center. He probably has power forward eligibility. Someone I do think I want to get to in tournaments. On DK, though, it's tough, man. How are you dealing with this front court? Bassey seems to be the favorite play of the field right now. We've seen more quality out of Collins historically with Wembanyama out, but I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to feel great about either, but it's such a good matchup. Like I think like if you're using an optimizer, you're probably getting both of those bigs in a lot of lineups right now. But it's a tough situation. I think it's one we definitely need to dig into a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of why every other center on the slate's kind of just an okay play, just because you have these two at both basically min price that could literally go out there and get you 30 fantasy points. I have a ton of both. I think they're under-owned, really, and I think they look really good. I think Collins makes more sense going up against Vooch, but I mean they're both good plays. They probably see similar minutes with Collins having a little bit more upside, but the price is also reflective on that. But overall, I think they're both really solid.
Yeah. On DK, I mean, they're just so damn cheap. Even if they only play 20 minutes each, you're in good shape. I don't know that they're going to share the floor very much. I mean, with Champagne and Barnes there, they're probably manning the four for the bulk of the minutes. But yeah, I think on DraftKings, I'm comfortable playing them in the same lineup. Are you?
Yeah, yeah. Me and Chuck kind of talked about that earlier, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I definitely would." I was like, "Me too."
Yeah.
I mean, they rate out as the best value on the slate in the model, so I think you just run with it.
Yeah, the prices are just, I mean, too cheap. And credit to FanDuel for pricing them up. I wish they didn't price them up so much, though, because, again, it's tough for me to get to them over there. I probably won't get to much, if any, of Bassey, center only, 5,500. But like I said, assuming Collins starts, I know he's 5,800, but you get that power forward eligibility. If no one wants to play him, I'll mix him in a little bit. Um, but yeah, I guess what's your take on the rest of the Spurs? I mean, Paul looks good, right? Castle. Um, don't hate mixing in maybe Harrison Barnes, but it's a tricky team because they do have really good players coming off the bench. They have Sochan, who's back and healthy. He's priced up though. Only played 21 minutes, but kind of crushed his value, which is insane. And then Keldon Johnson, who kind of seems to be on the outside looking in, even though he's a really good NBA player, but as far as DFS goes, I don't see myself getting there. But yeah, do you have any Sohan? And again, we have him for 24 minutes. He had a finger injury. To me, I'm surprised we can't project him for more. Like I don't think anyone across the industry is. But I'm not going to be surprised if he pushes 30 here. And then Vassell, I mean, he's super, super popular. Um, I get it, but at the same time, it's been a while since we've seen him play 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to read what they want to do with Sohan here. I mean, maybe they just start him, but I'm not sure what they do. I don't have any currently, but I don't hate getting there. I have a lot of the other players though, like Chris Paul. I think's a good play. Devin Vassell is one of my favorite value plays on DraftKings, and then Castle I think looks really good. Those are the ones I'm mainly getting to, but I don't mind mixing in a Keldon Johnson or Sohan.
Yeah, and so on. I mean, again, 6K, I think you can live without him. If you're landing on him, you're probably fine, but you do need him to play probably more than 24 minutes for that to be worth it. Like I said, I like Vassell better on DK, though. Would you be getting to him at 6K on FanDuel? To me, knowing he's probably not going to play 30 minutes, it's tough. Like, I'd rather get the Castle and Chris Paul, I think, even as chalk.
Yeah, I think it's harder to get to on FanDuel. Definitely looks better on DraftKings.
Nice. Yeah, and I am playing both sides tonight, so I just haven't done any building yet on DK. That's why I'm kind of favoring the FanDuel side, but definitely happy to be talking through these. We got another 8 o'clock game here between the Kings and the Grizzlies. Believe this is the highest total on the slate, 242.5 point total. Pulling up the injury report, I got it out of order. So the Kings are as healthy as they've been all season. No Trey Lyles. How are you handling Sacramento?
Yeah, I think DeMar is my favorite play from the Kings. I like getting there. 7,500, he just fills a tough position, small forward, power forward eligibility on DraftKings. And then behind him is Malik Monk for me. I like Monk starting now, has more upside for his minutes, and this is one of the higher paced games, so I like getting to some Monk.
Yeah, I like Monk too, and it's interesting that they're finally giving him the starting job. I know a lot of people thought he always should have been kind of the two there. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they're giving up some defense for offense, but it's kind of worked out. So I do like Monk. It's taking me off Fox at his price, I will say, now that he's up around 9K. Obviously, that usage is probably going to go down a bit now that they're sharing the floor more than usual. Sabonis, someone you can mix in. But again, this team is as healthy as any on the slate, which usually means it's not a spot you need to get to too aggressively. Over on the Memphis side of things, kind of similar situation. No Zach Edey, but we already knew that. No Vince Williams, no GG. We already knew that. Luke Kennard is questionable. So pretty much what we have tonight is what we've been dealing with. Jaw looks fine. It's just the minutes aren't always there for him. It does seem like they'll let him go over 30 in competitive games, but they're not rushing to do it. So if you're comparing him to other top guards, he's kind of tough to get to. But at the same time, the matchup and the high total here kind of tells you that it's not a bad spot for him, even with the limited minutes. Jaren Jackson, price where he should be, in my opinion. Desmond Bain, tougher to get to now that all these guys are back. Um, I don't know. Are you mixing in any of this value? I know we've seen Jalen Wells start at times. Probably can't get to him. Brandon Clark, if he starts, I guess it's not insane. But yeah, I mean, the total's so high here. I want to get to some of this low on value, but it's tough for me to really pluck any one play out as like the guy I want.
Yeah, Memphis is just similar to Golden State. They just run a 11, 12-man rotation every night,
Mhm.
so it's kind of hard to get to. I do like getting to Jaren Jackson a little bit more than the field on DraftKings. At his ownership, he looks like a decent play. And then Aldama's okay. And like you mentioned, Brandon Clark, he looks fine, but no real priorities.
Yeah, like I'm comfortable with Clark. I'm comfortable with a little bit of Wells. I'm comfortable with some Smart even. Like his minutes have to come up eventually. I'm not going to play him on FanDuel at 5,300, 4,500 on DK though. If he gets a couple extra minutes here, I mean, he could really crush value at that price. So I can't sit here and say I feel great about any of these guys because they do run such a deep rotation. But at the same time, I mean, there's some decent value here. Guys like Clark and Wells have been consistently finishing around 20-ish fantasy points. So as a last piece in, these aren't the worst plays in the world. We have one more 8 o'clock game, and then I'll check out chat again, guys, before we talk about the late game that's only on FanDuel. We have the Suns taking on the Pelicans. The Suns are pretty thin. Kevin Durant's going to be out for a couple weeks. Yusuf Nurkic out again here as well. This front court's been kind of confusing. I mean, we want to like Plumlee, but the minutes haven't really been there. Odaro, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, he was drawing way more ownership earlier in the day. We've seen that come down considerably. Obviously, Booker, Beal see a little bit of a boost with Durant out, but how are you handling the Suns team here? Not the best matchup against the Pelicans, but with a thin Pelicans team, not the worst either.
Yeah, without KD helps. I like Royce O'Neal for value. I think he's not an exciting play by any means, but especially on DraftKings where he's 4,900, small forward, power forward, just like looks like a strong value. I'm over the field right now, and it probably stays that way going into lock. And then Devin Booker, he looks better. Herb Jones is back, which kind of limits some of him, but I still don't mind getting to some Booker. And then to me, all the rest are kind of just guys I'll mix in.
Yeah, I wanted to like Beal here. Like logic says with KD out, we should, but he just played 30 minutes last game and they really raised his price. So even on FanDuel at 7,100, I'm not that excited about it. I will say Tyus Jones, a lot of his bigger games have come this year with one of this big three out. I know he's been kind of shaky. Don't mind mixing him in. I like your voice O'Neal call. I don't mind whether he starts or comes off the bench. I don't think it necessarily matters. We could see Grayson Allen start at the two. On FanDuel, if he starts, I'd have a little bit more interest in him. Let me ask you, are you getting to Oso Ighodaro, or are you just really loading up on the Spurs front court?
Yeah, I have like 2% of him. I think he's okay. I'd probably play him more on FanDuel. I'd be okay with it.
Yeah, where you have the power forward eligibility, I do think you make some sense over there. So I'm with you. Another quick look at chat, guys, before we rip through these last few. Doug shouting out the Vikings. Last question. Jose asking Levine or DeRozan. That's Levine for me. How about you?
Levine.
Thuggin asking if we could do Bassie and Collins in the same lineup on Yahoo. I'd imagine the answer is yes to that since it's yes on DK, right?
Yeah, yeah, you could.
And then Power bringing up 400 extra to get Jalen Green over Vassell and or Sochan on FanDuel. I agree with that. I really think Green's underrated right now. Finally seems to found his shot again. And yeah, let's use that to kind of transition to the last game on the slate. We have the Rockets taking on the Golden State Warriors in Golden State. Fred VanVleet's questionable. This is the biggest news on the slate. Again, this game is not on the DraftKings main slate. So if you're only on DraftKings, don't necessarily need to worry about it unless you're playing the late slate, showdown, something like that. But currently, as things stand on FanDuel, we're seeing a lot of ownership to Thompson, Jabari, Green, VanVleet, Sengun. This is a popular team. This is a good game environment. I mean, both teams are missing a lot of key pieces. The total isn't that high, but again, some underpriced spots for both of these teams. I already mentioned Van Fleet being out. Tari Eason is out as well. I forgot to mention that one, which probably secures minutes for someone like Jabari Smith, who's been playing better lately. I love Jabari Smith at 5,400 at power forward on FanDuel. Might be my favorite power forward play today, point per dollar, which is kind of insane to say out loud. But again, with Terry Eason out, just knowing those minutes are more secure than usual. Doka can't just go to Eason if Eason's a hot hand because Eason's unavailable. Jalen Green shouts out power. I like mixing him in as well. Obviously, if Van Fleet's out, both Green and Thompson become major priorities as things stand. They're still pretty damn good. And then Sengun, sub 9K. Always like him when he's sub 9K. No Draymond for the Golden State Warriors makes that an even better matchup as well. I know you're not on FanDuel tonight. Is this game on the Yahoo slate?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So what's your take, I guess, on Houston here?
Let's see. Really on Yahoo, I'm mainly just getting to Sengun, but I think you could mix in some almond. He's kind of expensive over there, but on FanDuel, I know personally I would be playing as if Fred VanVleet's out, so I would be jamming Almond Thompson. I think Jalen Green looks a lot better, and then Sengun's going to be asked to facilitate a little more if he's out. But either way, I think they all look like pretty good plays. And then I like the shout on Jabari; he's been really solid.
Yeah, I love Jabari, and again with Eaton out, I think that's kind of a no-brainer. Kind of surprised he's not even more popular over there. The good thing about this game is you do have some pivots on the other side of the ball. Shouts out to Boyle for our cover boy today. We got Brandon Podzemski there, and that is because Steph Curry is out. But I do just want to mention this before I pull up just Golden State. Like, kind of play out these scenarios in your head, right? So if Van Fleet's in, you could still have some Thompson, you could still have some Smith, but if you or Green, excuse me, but if you're just building with Green and Van Fleet's out, you could pivot to Thompson, who's going to see that bigger boost. And yeah, you could also use some of this Golden State value here with Curry out, Podzemski, Kaminga. Wiggins is questionable. Let me pull up the injury report there. Yeah, so Curry's out, Draymond's out, Melton is out, and Wiggins is questionable. Kaminga, if he starts, looks great. Kerr obviously has a short leash on him. Can't be that short though with some of their better players out. He's looks great here at this price. Podzemski, again, 5,500, too cheap for him and what his role is likely going to be here. Wiggins, I've been playing a lot of this season, which is crazy because this guy was like the pariah of the league a season ago. Like no one wanted to play him, dealing with things off the court. Great to see him back and playing at a really high level. Looney's fine. Buddy Hield, very much boomer bust, has that high ceiling though. Could definitely get a few extra shots with Curry out. And then Jackson Davis, where he has power forward eligibility on FanDuel. I think they probably start Looney here against the Rockets. But yeah, Jackson Davis, cheap enough to maybe mix in as a power forward. But what's your take on Golden State? I think it's obvious that we like Paz and Kuminga, but are you getting to much of the rest of these guys?
On Yahoo, I'm getting to a lot of Kevon Looney. I think he's a good play there, assuming he starts near
Nice.
min price. And then I think Slow-Mo is worth mixing in over there. Kyle Anderson, also on FanDuel, I think he's an okay play at 4,100. And then Buddy Hield's just mispriced on FanDuel. I get the ownership there. But Kaminga's probably my favorite play of all of them on FanDuel.
Yeah, Kuminga's a beast when he gets the extra usage. Just looks like a completely different player when he's not, I don't know, third or fourth option on the floor. So yeah, I'm with you, man. Love Kuminga. I do want to mention, I think Moses Moody probably gets the start. If you're kind of pivoting late and maybe you think Van Fleet's going to be out, he gets ruled in. You could use him as a value piece to maybe upgrade elsewhere, um, or get up to Van Fleet from a Jalen Green or who else was it? Amon Thompson. So there is some maneuverability here in this late game, which is obviously good. I'm happy to get exposure and just kind of hope maybe some of these guys get ruled out late. But let's go ahead and get to the dummy build. Again, dummy builds on DraftKings. We cannot use that late game, which is probably fine. But should we just start with the Spurs front court?
Yeah, that's how I do it.
Yeah, right. I mean, it sucks taking up both center spots, but at the same time, I mean, they're just too cheap. Even if they both play 20 minutes, they probably get you over 20 fantasy points each, which at min prices, beautiful, right? So where are we going next?
I'd say either Vassell or Chris Paul.
I trust Paul a little bit more. I mean, Vassell at his price is tough not to like, but I'll go with Paul for the minutes for now. We're left with a lot, man. Who are your favorite payups tonight?
I think we both kind of liked SGA.
hmm 10-1 is just too cheap against Toronto, in my opinion. Really, really like that one. Still left with plenty of salary. I'm trying to think of who else we were both pretty bullish on. Oh, no pun intended, Zach Levine. Um, who else are we going to? We got shooting guard, power forward, and forward around 6 to 7K each per position.
Let's
I
see.
mean, Monk is too cheap.
Yeah, I like going Monk.
I like that Monk price. And what else we got? Um, I mean, Jaron Jackson's kind of tempting. Don't need to force that though.
I like Jalen Williams.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I mean, let me ask you this. I guess it doesn't matter, right? I mean, we've seen upside games from Williams in the same
Oh
games as
yeah, they
SGA.
are together. Never mind.
It's
I
like
forgot we had
there's like
SGA.
crazy correlation there, but when I'm paying up twice, I'm less inclined to do it. How about Barnes instead?
Yeah.
Can you do that? Yeah, he's got small forward because then we get that run back, and I can definitely see a world where they both do well. Then 4,100 for a power forward. Green, ew. Oh, Boucher.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, then we're left with 500. I mean, Monk, a little bit of a tournament play. We can maybe upgrade that to, I don't know, CJ. Not that he's much safer. Probably just stick with Monk. But yeah, that's the build for today, guys. Obviously, still waiting on that Van Fleet news, especially if you're on FanDuel. Let's see what else we got going. Mike's saying healed over Pods. For me, it's Pods all day just because healed so scoring dependent. I know we could spike a ceiling, but coming off the bench, needs to shut the fall. What's your take on Buddy Healed tonight?
Yeah, I think he looks good. They're gonna need his scoring, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, we have him for only 24 minutes, even with Curry out. It's just tough for me to get excited about a player like that. But I mean, at the price, certainly has some upside. Mike saying can't trust someone with a Las Vegas Raiders flag behind him. Taking shots at you, man. I don't know. It is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Ingram and Herb Jones expected to play around 30 minutes each. I like Ingram as a play. I do think Jones matters for opposing teams. He's one of the only defenders that's kind of locked down right now. Teams have gotten better at creating screens, getting creative around them. But yeah, I don't know. And yeah, Mike and Doug here, total agreement on Buddy Healed. Yeah, guys, I mean, we got 2 minutes. Let me pull them up real quick. Or I can't pull them up because we're on DK. But yeah, looking at my other screen. So like Heald has gone over 30 fantasy points on FanDuel twice this month, or it's been a month since he's done it, and that was with so many guys out. I mean, I don't know that we can expect over 24 minutes from him. He's fine as like a last piece in, but again, I think I trust Pods a lot more. I trust a lot of these guys a lot more than him. Um, I mean, Pods, he's over 30 every single night. I mean, most of the time, even with Curry in. So again, that's not how you should be building like these 30-point benchmarks. But I think just for this conversation, comparing the two, much more comfortable with Pods, a guy who gets rebounds, assists, etc. Jalen Williams or Mobley. That's Williams for me. How about you?
I have Mobley point per dollar, but Jalen Williams as far as raw points on
Yep.
DraftKings.
And man, there's just so much Pods hate in here. Power's joining in on it now. The reason Houston wins by 18, bad pounces, foul, poor decision making. That's the thing, man. I mean, it's DFS. We don't need him to have the highest IQ as long as he's producing for his price. And again, I think his minutes are much more secure, regardless of how this game plays out. Mike is saying Pods is garboo. So we'll end on
He's
that note.
he's definitely not good, but we play terrible players all the time in DFS. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Chuck took down that contest with Miller last night, who was averaging like .003 fantasy points per minute. Colin, one last question: Dort or O'Neal last man? And I think with KD out, it's Royce for me. How about you?
yeah, Royce.
Nice, man. So once again, and Mike, we know we're joking around. We like the banter. It's fun, the back and forth. We're not complaining at all, but we definitely appreciate all you guys, whether you like pods or not. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back here tomorrow. And let's hope to see more screenshots in the Discord. Been a pretty hot week for the guys, and let's just make it continue. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Make some money.